Today we're going to learn about how our brains learn. Our session today is titled How the Brain Learns. What's different today is that we're going to use a method called spaced learning to learn how the brains learn. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to divide our session into 5 parts. 3 learning episodes and 2 activity breaks in the middle, each about 10 minutes long. And we start with the first part. We're going to go through the whole session, the whole workshop, all the slides in about 10 minutes. It's going to be a little bit quick. You don't need to ask any questions now because we're going to be doing this again after activity number 1. Okay? So, we're going to start talking about how our brains learn. We're going to talk basically about 2 things. 1, our brains. We're going to know a little bit about our brains, some information. And number 2, we're going to learn about the learning brain, which is what we are most interested in today. Okay, you don't need to write anything. I'm going to give you some handouts at the very end. Number 1, your brain. Your brain is about 15 centimeters long. That's the length of our brains. It's about the size of 2 fists. If you take 2 fists, put them next to each other, this is about the size of your brain. Okay? And it weighs about 1.5 kilograms, 1.5 kilograms. It is made up of many cells called neurons. It is made up of many cells called neurons. Now, let's introduce the mighty neuron. Our neurons are the building blocks of our brains. And here in this diagram, we just have 3 neurons to show you what neurons look like, or what the relationship between them exactly is. Our brains have billions of neurons. This is just an example. Now, these little things here are called neurons. Each neuron has something called an axon, which is something that transfers information from inside the neuron to the very outer edge of the neuron. Every neuron also has something called dendrites. And dendrites are these little protruding lines here on the screen that connect one neuron to the axon of another neuron. So basically, if this neuron is going to connect with this neuron, the information comes out from here, travels through the axon, and then transfers here into the dendrites of another neuron, transferring the information here, or basically connecting one neuron to the other, using an axon from one of them with the dendrites of the other. Now, every single neuron will have axons and will have dendrites as well. There is a gap, a space, between the axon and the dendrites of any 2 neurons. And this little gap is called a synapse. Synapse is a gap where there are something called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals that transmit the information from one neuron to the other, or connects one neuron to the other. So they connect first through the axon, then through the synapse, which is a gap between both of them, wirelessly, like we would wirelessly if you would, through the dendrites of another neuron. And this is how 2 neurons would connect to each other. Growing dendrites. Every neuron has an axon already, but not all neurons have as many dendrites as the other. What happens is that we grow dendrites. Our brains, our neurons actually grow dendrites as we learn. Right now, as you are learning, there are these little dendrites growing inside your brains, forming connections to other neurons, and therefore forming learning or memory. And as new learning occurs, our neurons grow dendrites. These dendrites connect with axons of other neurons, relating new information with previous learning and memories. So I learned something now, I connect it to something I already know, using the connection between neurons through axons and dendrites. The more branches or dendrites and the more connections we form with other neurons, the better our learning and the stronger our memory. The more connections we form, the more dendrites we have, we learn better and our memories stay longer. Connections are formed through small spaces called synapses. Synapses and are carried by neurotransmitters, which are chemicals that transfer or connect 2 neurons to each other in the synapse gap. These neurotransmitters, there are many of them, but one of the most famous is dopamine. Dopamine is one of the famous neurotransmitters. That's why people with learning disabilities, people who have Alzheimer's disease who tend to forget, usually have a problem with the synapse. They either don't have dopamine, they don't have neurotransmitters to connect the neurons together, or this space, the synapse is clogged. Okay, it's closed, so that the information cannot connect, and therefore they forget, or therefore they cannot learn that way. Our memory. When we talk about our memories, we basically have two types of memories. We have something called a working memory, which is a desk like this one exactly here in the diagram, and this is a file cabinet, which is called our long-term memory. If you know anything about computers, this is more like the RAM, and this is more like the hard drive. So, working memory and long-term memory. Working memory is the memory that holds the information that you need right now, the thing that you're using right now, the thing you're working on right now. Just as my desk has the essential things that I need to use right now. Now, there are two things that go into the working memory. A third that comes into it also, but from another source. And then two things coming out. So 3 going in and 2 going out. 3 going in. 1 is information from the environment. As you're listening to me right now, there's a lot of information from the environment around you coming into your brains. 1 is what I'm saying. 2 is how cold it is, how hot it is, the sounds you're hearing, the feeling you're feeling, the chair is comfortable, it's uncomfortable, everything around you, the colors of everybody around you, what he's wearing, what she's wearing, everything here on the board, everything on the wall. This is information entering into our working memories right now. And then thoughts from the brain. What am I going to do next? I'm bored, it's interesting, daydreaming. These are thoughts from inside our brains. And third, retrieving memory from our long-term memory. Trying to remember information that I know from before, related to what you're thinking of or what you're learning right now. So 3 things. Information from the environment in, thoughts from inside your brain, memory from your long-term memory. And then how many things go out? 2. 1 is loss. Things that are lost. Here, this is my desk. If I put too much information onto my desk, lots of papers, something will have to fall down, right? So this is the loss. Second thing is the information that I've learned that is being stored into the long-term memory. Now, how does it become stored? By forming connections with other neurons using the axons and the dendrites, therefore storing this memory inside my brain. Okay? Now, our working memories can only hold 7 distinct pieces of information for children ages 14 and over, adults and children ages 14 and over. Okay? You can only remember about 7 distinct pieces of information at a time. If it's more than 7 different pieces of information, then probably you're going to lose something right here. Okay? Next. Let's test our working memories really quickly. Okay? Look at these numbers 4, 10 seconds, 7 seconds. Write them down if you have a piece of paper. For those of you who have, that's it. That's fine. Okay, now look at this number for 7 seconds. Now write it down. Okay, so the people already have the paper with them. Who got this right? First number. 1, 2 out of 3. Okay, 4. Okay, so we have 3 out of 4. 4 people had papers, 3 out of 4 got it right. Completely. How many numbers did you miss?
1.
Only 1. Now what is this? 7 distinct pieces of information. 7 numbers that are random order, that are different, no relationship between them. We were able to remember the 7 numbers almost perfect. How about this one? Who got the 10 right? Nobody. Okay? Who got 3 out of the 10 wrong? 4? Okay. What is 4 out of 10? 6. So you basically were able to memorize around 6 or about 7, which is the maximum that we can hold at a time. What gets in first? What gets into our memories? There's a lot of things. Didn't we say our memories have information from the environment, information from inside our brains, and information coming from our long-term memories, all coming in at the same time? What comes in first? Number 1, data affecting survival. So if you're scared, if you're extremely hungry, if you're thirsty, you're not going to be able to learn anything. Because the first thing coming into your brain is how you're feeling, how hungry you are, how thirsty you are, how afraid or scared you are, how dangerous things are around us. So anything affecting my survival comes in first. Then, data generating emotions, second of all. If I'm jealous, if I'm mad, if I'm sad, all of this will get into my brain first before I can learn anything. And finally, data for new learning, what you're trying to learn right now. So this is the last thing that gets into our brain. So if we want to learn well, we need to first be safe, okay? Survival issues, no, nothing. Second, we need to have our emotions intact. We're not sad, we're not mad, we're not jealous, we don't have any problems with anybody in our classrooms, for example. And we are settled, so we are going to learn. Another way to learn well is to connect the learning to our emotions. So make learning a little bit emotional, so therefore you get both of them inside at the same time. What gets stored? Now, before was what gets into our memories. Now what gets stored? What's going to go into the long-term memory, to the file cabinet? The thing that will go into our long-term memories is information that has two things, sense and meaning. What is sense? Sense means, what is it? What is this thing I'm learning? So, today we're going to learn about the solar system. Give me sense. What is the solar system? It's the sun and its planets. This is called the solar system. And the planets have moons. This is a solar system. So you know what it is. Then, what it means, the meaning of it. Why is it that way? Why does the solar system have all these planets? Why do planets have moons? Why do the planets revolve around the sun? Why? Or, why do I have to learn this? What's so important about learning why the brain learns? How the brain learns? What's so important about learning the periodic table in chemistry? What's so important about learning algebra? What's so important about learning poetry? What's important about it? Why do I need to learn it? If you can give your sense, or if your teachers can give you these two things, then the information that you're learning will probably be stored very easily in your long-term memory. Sense, what it is, meaning, why is it that way, or why do I need to know what I'm learning? Now we have two brains. If you look to our brains from the outside, all of this was from the inside, the neurons and the memories. Now let's look at it from the outside. We have two brains. We have something called the reactive brain, and we have something called the thinking brain. We basically have two filters in the top of our brain, something called the RAS and something called the amygdala. Information coming in is filtered right here and is either directed to our reactive brains or directed to our thinking brains. What happens is, if we feel stress, or we feel danger, or we feel boredom, then basically most of this information is going to go to our reactive brains. And then we can only do three things. Our reactive brain is very primitive, it only knows how to do three things. It can either fight, or do flight, or freeze. Fight means to fight back. Okay? To actually fight back. It's like walking in the street, somebody comes to you with a knife or with a gun. You feel what? Danger. What is going to happen? Are you going to think about it? No, you automatically do one of these three things. First thing is fight. You fight back. Okay? You jump, you hit, you punch, you kick, you fight back. Or flight. You run away. Or freeze. You just stop and you have no idea what to do. And this is what happens to us inside our classrooms, or while we're learning, while we're studying, if we feel stress or danger or boredom. We either fight, so we fight, we don't want to learn, I don't want to understand, I don't want to go to college, I don't want to finish this test, I don't want to get a high score in the SAT, I fight back. Or flight, I daydream, I go to another world completely and I just forget about everything I'm doing. Or I freeze. I simply look at the paper, it's looking back at me, I'm looking at it, I don't understand anything, and I'm unable to do anything. I just freeze and stay the way I am. Why does this happen to us? Why does it happen during the exam? Because I either feel stress, danger, or boredom. Now you know. So try not to be stressed. Make sure you feel safe with all the meanings of the word safe, and that you're not bored, you have sense, and you have meaning to what you're doing or what you're learning. You won't use your reactive brain then. What are you going to use? Your learning brain. Well, what happens? When do we use our learning brains? Basically, if there's interest, if I'm interested in what I'm doing, you all have hobbies. If you're doing something you really love, if you're doing your hobby, you're not going to fight or flight or freeze. You're going to spend hours and hours and hours doing what you like to do without feeling any kind of boredom. Why? Because you are interested in what you're doing. Novelty, something new, something entirely new, something different. This will grab your attention. Relevance, something that is relevant to you. You're going to take your SATs in about a month. Is it relevant to you? Yes, it's only relevant to you because your SAT grades are the grades that are going to help you go to the college or university that you want. So it's relevant to you. So I need to know I'm studying this because it benefits me. I'm doing this test because it's relevant to me. It's important only for me. I'm not doing it for anybody else. If I have one of these three, I'm using my thinking brain, which learns really well. Now, the learning brain. All this was an introduction to the brains in general. Let's talk about a couple points here in the learning brain. Number one, we know something called prime time and downtime. Prime time is when we are learning the best, okay? And downtime is when we are learning the worst. Prime times increase in shorter learning episodes. So whenever we learn something in short episodes, we have a lot of prime time. So always make your learning episodes as short as possible. So if I'm going to study today for an hour, don't sit for a whole hour studying. No, sit for 20 minutes, little break, 20 minutes, little break, 20 minutes, little break, 20 minutes, little break, for example. Okay? That's more than an hour. Example, a 20-minute learning episode has 18 minutes of prime time. That's 90% prime time. Good learning time. A 40-minute learning episode has 30 minutes of prime time. Only 75% of prime time. What happens in our classrooms, our lessons are usually 40 minutes long. What happens in the 40 minutes is that we only learn using prime time 75% of our lesson, 3/4 of the lesson. And the other quarter is lost, it's downtime. But if our lessons were divided into 20 minutes, then maybe a short 5-minute break, and then another 20 minutes, giving a total of 45 minutes, you would be learning in each learning episode 90% efficiency. Okay? So this is called prime time and downtime. Then we have something called the Primacy-Recency Effect. Primacy-Recency Effect basically says that we remember best that which comes first at the very beginning of a learning episode, then that which comes last. So what do we learn the best in any learning episode? The first thing we learned and the last thing we learned. We remember the least that which comes right after the middle. So the most thing that we don't understand or we don't remember is what happens in the middle of our learning episode, in the middle of our lessons. Now, a lot of teachers waste a lot of precious time in their lessons because they spend the beginning of the learning episode taking attendance, marking papers, giving away papers, taking homework, and they waste the beginning of the lesson, and then they waste the end of the lesson giving free time or talking about what they're going to do next time or something like that. And the information, the most important information, is in the middle of the lesson, which is where the Primacy-Recency Effect shows that we don't understand, or we don't learn, or we don't remember that well. This means that we should gain information at the beginning of the learning episode and reinforce that information at the end of the learning episode, which is called a summary. Use the middle of the learning episode for practice, where you don't need to learn anything new. Primacy-Recency Effect, by the way, is one of the main reasons that led to spaced learning, where I now know that if I have prime time and downtime, I make shorter learning episodes. If I know primacy or recency, then I explain at the very beginning and at the very end the most important things. In the middle, I have the activities. The novelty seeker. Our brains always seek what is novel, what is new. Our brains always pay extra attention to what is novel, new or different. So you've been in this room before, you've seen everything here, you feel okay, nothing is new. But if you came today and you found the walls all painted purple, for example, you would all realize this, okay? If you found me wearing jeans, I'm sure you would all realize this as well. Why? Because it's something novel, something new, something different. A predictable environment lowers the brain's interest in the outside world. If it's something predictable, you already know it, you're not interested in what's happening around you. And focuses the brain within. This is good for studying. It's good. When you're studying, you don't want to be distracted by everything else around you. But bad for learning in the classroom. But if your classroom is so boring and looks the same every time and everything is exactly the same, you're not going to be interested to look around you, look at the board, look at the teacher, look at the walls and everything around you. You need to have something changed every now and then. Okay? This is a big difference by practicing at home for a test and then going to a school or a test center to take the actual test. At home, you know everything around you, you feel safe, you feel predictable, so you're focused on what you're doing. At the school, you're sitting next to people you've never seen before, you have a teacher standing in front of you who you've never seen before, the school is new, the classroom is new, the chair is new, the desk is new, everything is strange, which makes me try to always focus on what is outside. So maybe it's a good idea to go to your testing center before the test, buy some time, study everything around you, make sure you get it all inside so you don't unintentionally during the test look around you and start to learn what's happening outside. Okay, activity number 1. What we're going to do is I'm going to give each one of you a blank white paper and you have exactly 10 minutes, each one of you, to draw a picture of me in the classroom, okay? And use something remarkable about me, something that says something about me, something you know about me, okay? And don't Don't be afraid to be sarcastic if you want, that's fine. Not too sarcastic though. Okay, you don't have to be an artist. Just draw whatever you think you can draw that resembles me in my classroom. Okay? I'm going to get you the papers right now.